Okay. Check if your mic works.
Okay. I feel like I want to do with it. I'm a CPA.
So, can you guys hear me with this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we figured, Dennis has had a long and storied career, so the best place to start would be right at the beginning. So so Dennis grew up in South Africa, and in the late 70s he moved here to Canada with his wonderful wife Laura. And Dennis, why don't you tell us why you left South Africa, why you came here, and what you did when you got here?
I'm happy to do that. But firstly, I want to thank you all for coming. And I hope you get some good take-home value for this. Because initially, being the salesman he is, Michael and Adam, they explained to me that there would be a small gathering of 10, 20 people. I was speaking at a boardroom table, so and tell my story. Because I've learned a long time ago, if you want to tell your story, you better make sure that people are interested. So I hope there's some take-home value here. And just a few people I met briefly here. So impressive that everyone is here, and it's a tribute to how you understand how the market is progressing and what one has to do for a career, for a successful and productive career these days. It's very different from my world. So I'm going to tell you my story about my world, but it doesn't relate. I did an MBA when I came here from South Africa. I'm a true product of the Canadian immigration system, which is a nice thing to be. And I came to Canada, and I'm always willing to come to these events, particularly to try to give back, because this is such a wonderful place. I've met the most amazing people here. It's a free marketplace. There's an amazing amount of ingenuity that takes place. And I always remind you how I'm an immigrant because I left a place that wasn't as good, and how much attention you have to place on what a wonderful city we have here. So that's not I guess not that's not the answer, but certainly it's the answer I want to give you. I'm very grateful for being here, and it's afforded me the most amazing life. And every morning I kind of pinch myself. I say, wow, what a ride. And a lot of it's got to do with you creating this wonderful city and this wonderful country. So I'm an immigrant.
No, that's great. So you came over here, and you said you did an MBA. What was the first job that you had?
So I never did an MBA. I did a CA. I qualified in South Africa because I have a Jewish mother who told me you've got to get a degree. I couldn't get into medical school, so I did the CA stuff. And I came here, and it was inbred in me, so I did it all over again. I qualified all over again. I couldn't wait to leave because it was a different profession at the time. And so I shouldn't go on. I felt I was comfortable in the profession. I was doing okay. But certainly I wanted to be a little more active in the career I was going to undertake.
Okay.
And in those days, you didn't have a Luminari.
That's right.
Network, as much as I could.
No, okay, great. So you started in accounting. You were working in a firm?
Yes.
Cool. One of the ones that maybe some people were here.
Well, it was a large, kind of one of the original smaller firms, and it was sold into Anderson.
Oh, okay.
So anyway.
So yeah,
Interesting.
nobody here works there. Okay, so you started at the firm, and then you decided that you wanted to put it all on the line, quit your job, and become an entrepreneur. Can you take us to that moment, to that decision point? What led to it?
There isn't really an inflection point that you can say this is what happened. But when I made the decision, clearly you have to have a kind of large appetite for risk. Because I really was at the point where I used to count mentally if I can make the rent check every month. And if you want to go out for a big dinner, there was really a budget, so that's where I was in my life. And if you weighed everything up, you figured, look, I can always go back and become an accountant again. And maybe I enjoyed it so much it was the best incentive to go out and try to succeed. So I do reflect. It's a vivid memory of walking out of the office when I finally decided I'm done, and I had this funny blue briefcase, and I looked at it and I thought, okay, and I put it in the garbage.
See, the one thing you can always count on with accountants is self-deprecating humor. So we're good in this crowd. So when you talk about risk, I mean, from what I understand, you took 3 mortgages out on the house to start your first company, Mission Electronics. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that company and what it was like, starting something at a time where there wasn't all of the infrastructure around startups that there is today?
Yeah, so this is an era where I'd never heard of the term angel investor. There are no incubators, no accelerator, there's nothing. And I'm doing an audit agreement. And the CFO says to me, have you ever heard these? Anyway, I was an audiophile, if you even remember. I'm so old, it's crazy. When you didn't have computers, we listen to music. You used to take a record, you clean the record, you put it on a turntable, and you guys don't even know what I'm talking about. That was the world I lived in. And I love that stuff. And I was really lucky. So he introduced me to a few guys, and I felt, this is it. How many breaks do I get? I didn't even know anyone in the city, really. And we went off to start this company. And I think I think the MBA, I had to see it. The MBA I got was clearly when you have to go to the bank and sign personally for your capital. It kind of sharpens the mind. If you want innovation, if you want creativity, if you want to really feel like you got to succeed, well, there's no alternative because they're coming to take your house if you don't meet the numbers at the end of the month. So doing your numbers and collecting your receivables and getting the production line going and doing marketing in a guerrilla style tactic that would get the maximum benefit. Every customer we knew became my dearest personal friend. You had no choice. They had to buy from you at the end of the month to make your numbers. So it was an amazing time.
Well,
and I think the pressure that they put on you, because every time you run out of cash, I had to go to someone else's uncle and explain to them that you're very wealthy, you got to help me because Friday, I got to make the payroll. And I don't think you understand how badly you sleep Thursday night when you have to go to the office and you have no idea. And all these people are there and they have families and weekends and they've been planning. So, yeah, different times. And I'm not too sure if all these, maybe I shouldn't say this. I can speak freely, right? We're French.
Yeah.
I don't know if these incubators work. And I don't know if what we do right. So I just come along and give Michael here some moolah, and he said, okay, I'm going to work hard. But there's nothing that drives you more than when, your real life is on the line. So I wonder about it.
Just for everybody here, can you tell a little bit about Mission Electronics and what you did and what it was?
It was home theater equipment, or home audio. So we sold the first two-way reflex loudspeaker, for those of you who know it, really excellent reproduction of sound, for $9.95. And there was no one had ever sold a speaker for that kind of price. And it was a wonderful thing. We built it, we designed it. There were a few of us that did this. And if you went to Play Blue Radio, I would bring the late Saul Mandelson some beer and a coffee in the morning and sit with him and explain to him how on Saturday we got to have a promotion, although I can't afford it. He'd have to, and so it went. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. The factory was in London, England, so it was this British-style audio. And I'm not too sure, I think they still sell them. And it was at a time where, we really didn't have enough monies to have patents. We never really thought about it, but if you see high-end audio, a lot of this stuff, and this is, it's not digital, right? This is the old analog stuff, which still sounds a lot better, and I see they still sell a lot of turntables now, and it's coming back to fashion. That's analog reproduction, it's a beautiful thing, and it was fun. I love music. And back to Luminari, how I found this guy, just total fluke. I was doing the audit and I was getting on his nerves, so he changed the subject to something else. And so we got to know each other.
Oh, wow. So different for sure. And why don't you just take us briefly through how Mission ended, how Aviva started, and kind of that part of your life.
So I hope this is interesting.
Yes.
So we're running Mission. It's difficult. You work 24/7 and you can't afford much, and so you become very close to the accountant because he has to give you numbers every quarter to get to the bank to do everything. And he was a wonderful guy, our accountant. And he showed me VisiCalc running on an Apple IIe. And I couldn't believe how cool this was. It was a spreadsheet. This is an old style spreadsheet with a funny little screen. But I'd been doing all these, it was just an interesting time to be introduced to a spreadsheet because I understood the consumer marketing aspect. I now was introduced to a personal computer. And once again, good fortune that the evolution of Commodore was Toronto-based. The whole of Commodore was around here, and it's a long story, but by one network or one friend and another, they figured that I could sell all the retailers here software. And so I started a software company that was going to be distributing all the software for Commodore 64. And lucky, because that was the beginning of the PC revolution. It taught me how fast people can actually move in this area. I learned about raising monies, which was a different world. I met VCs. I met this man, Rich Kapoor, who invented a spreadsheet. And I was fascinated by him in particular. And I remember him doing his presentation where he's going to do that quarter. I thought, wow, how do you get to those numbers? And he introduced a product called Lotus 123. That was before we used to compete. One spreadsheet competed with another spreadsheet. And he blew his numbers away. And I was sold. I was going to be in this industry forever. I couldn't believe what was happening. And it was fascinating because everyone was really innovating. And it's actually, we go through many cycles, and we're in the same cycle now. And so that's why I say I pinch myself, because I'm just naturally curious. And to be in that period when the PC evolution actually took place, or revolution took place, was fantastic.
So you got into technology because of spreadsheets? So you are an accountant. There you go. There you go.
Do you know how satisfying it is to see a spreadsheet when you were working with a pencil and an eraser on a big slate and you had to get it a balance? I actually did that. How many of you are CAs in the room? Okay, so I'm getting the message. You've never done that.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, just to give people a little bit of context, you ended up selling Aviva to a company called Ingram, and then you decided to start the next company that probably was your first home run, as you would say, Rina. What was the insight that led you to start Rina? Tell us a little bit about that and the transition.
So, all these companies were home runs. When I was younger, I had different visions of where I was going. And a home run is to be able to do, no, I'm serious, I reflected on this. The home run is not the eventual ending, it's the journey. And the journey for Mission, when I didn't know how I was going to afford to pay my fees at the end of the day. Different challenges, when in retrospect, they were wonderful times. And my wife had to have a job. There was no discussion. And I think it was better when she worked. But anyway, Rina, what was the question? What was I doing?
Yeah, what was the insight that led to you starting Rina?
So when I got the financing for Aviva, it was sold to this company called Ingram. Ingram Micro D, by the way, is still in existence in Toronto. And if you go back in those corporate records, I signed the original incorporation. And it was at my home. I didn't have a warehouse. It was on my living room floor. Anyway, so Rina, I met these. I needed a change because Ingram were going to buy my equity from me, and I didn't want to work for them. And I'd already realized that now I've got all my MBAs, and the challenge was to become a software publisher. I met these wonderful guys, two guys who did the publishing. They were engineers. And it was a really good synergistic fit. They didn't understand finance, didn't understand my world, and they were just engineers who were going to produce this product, and we actually produced an electronic forms product. Once again, I'll tell you all that. I went out and told people there's this new concept, graphic user interface coming along. It's called Windows. And you can design a form very easily. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. So we started a company. There was absolutely no financing available once again, but I was much more mature at this point. So I found a struggling software company on the TSX. I approached them. I said I would become the CEO in exchange for you taking some of this cash and investing it in Rina, and I actually did a terrible deal. You know, Rina, we did okay, but in today's age, when you can get financing the way you get financing today, we would have done very different in the capital equation. But regardless, it was wonderful. We got financing, we were public, and then I realized you have to report every quarter. There's a lot of people who get upset with you if you don't produce results. So it was a wonderful 8 years, and you know, out of all the things that happened in Rina, I had there were 2 partners here, and I went to get the 4th partner in California. So I went to California, Los Gatos. He's still a very close friend of mine. I sat on the couch and I convinced his wife this was a really good deal, because there was nothing he could do without his wife, and his wife and I are still good friends. And so we had the ability to open an office in Los Gatos, and clearly I understood distribution. I had run the distribution business here for software. So yeah, that MBA school really played out for Rina.
So we heard about a time early on in Rina's life where you were given an acquisition offer that at that point would have been life-changing for you and your partners, but you decided not to take it. And not only that, you convinced your partners not to take it. Can you take us into that room? What was that discussion like?
Oh, that was not that dramatic. In hindsight, yeah, that was a good decision. But it's very rare you kind of get like a rock and roll band. You know, everyone's playing their own instrument, and these guys really gelled, and they allowed me just to do virtually not interfere, and everything would be okay. So we had this offer, we pondered it for a weekend, and I decided, you know, that's just not what we should do. But if you want stories from Rina, and you find them interesting, I can tell you hundreds of stories. This colleague here, I never tell these stories. My daughter was here, but I don't think she was here. And I was thinking she would hear them read for the first time.
Well, I did hear one story about how you went from forms to fax at a conference.
Right.
If I'm hearing that correctly, do you mind sharing that with everybody?
So Rina, as I said before, started off designing electronic forms, and we had this pretty good software business design. We were the leaders in electronic forms. And frankly, there was only one competitor in Ottawa called Jetform. And we were kind of friendly, interesting days. And a young man walked into our office and explained to us that he had this capability of sending a form to a fax. And it was just, I know it sounds dumb, right? But it was revolutionary at the time. You could take a form and you could send it to a fax. And it was really a print driver that you had to build in order to make this happen. Built it over the weekend, and we did this. And so we went to a trade show, and we had our booth, and it said, forms. Yeah, I got to remember. Anyway, it was all about forms. And on the side, we said to this little, this engineer, and we had a little station, we said, you can add this station, and you can show people fax. And he was faxing he was using a PC to send to a fax machine. He set up a fax machine across the aisle, and he would just take a piece of paper, write on it, and we'd send it to a fax machine. And after about 2 hours, there was a line, about 70, 80 people deep. By the afternoon, there must have been 300 people crowded around us. So that evening, we changed the forms to fax. And we decided we would have a fax product from then on. And so that was a product called WinFax. And that was very fortunate timing for us. So we were the first company at Rina to give away, we started the freemium model. So in the days where there must have been less than 300 million PCs out there, we gave about 25 million, maybe 30 million copies of WinFax away. And at the time it was, I know it sounds like everyone does it, when you're the first to do it, it's kind of interesting. And so we gave the product away, asking people to upgrade. And we would get rid of the retailers and take the upgrades ourselves. And so we had a fantastic growth.
That's great. So just before we kind of move on from Rina, can you tell us why was it called Rina?
Let me tell you how we sold Rina. I don't really speak about that. But Yeah, so I know you're all interested, or possibly interested in business and starting. And so starting is very difficult. And you asked me why we didn't sell at one point.
Yeah.
So that was a good decision. But we had a guy in our office, his name was Cyberjack. But Jack Bezos, but we called him Cyberjack. We had a product actually called Cyberjack for a while. And Jack would come to my office every Tuesday morning when we had meetings, and as the meeting disbanded, he said, I've got to show you this. Let me just show you this. And he would show me the internet when it still was a flashing cursor, and he would type his little stuff in and said, this is going to screw everyone up. And no one is going to do email anymore the way you know it, let alone do fax. So this is going to be revolutionary, and we really got to start looking at this. And after pondering this for 2 weeks, I woke up one morning and I said, oh, this isn't going to be good for fax, this is going to be good for forms, I don't know where we're headed over here, and this is not good for us. And within 2 weeks, we had a suitor, I engaged a banker, and we were in discussions to sell the company. So it was one of those interesting times where, you know, the Rina really was, we scratched the name out the Rina on our kitchen table. The whole thing was really our baby that we started together. And pretty much made the decision with one of my partners that, yeah, we're going to do this, and then I'm going to sell this to the rest of my partners. And it was difficult. It was really tough at that point. We had about 700 people. Everyone had come to become a huge family. It was part of it was part of my life. It was the entire movement, let alone just the company. And it just had so much going for it, and I was terrified that we wouldn't sell another copy of fax at some point. And I'd seen the internet, and it was quite treacherous. So, and that was most probably selling at the best possible time. Nothing to do with that.
Okay, we'll skip over that one. So, and this one might be a little bit more kind of cutting close to the surface, but you know, you're sitting here now, obviously having a lot of successes under your belt. But do you remember a time when you felt like it was all falling apart, like you thought that you were going to fail, that all of what you had done was for naught?
Yeah, it's a strange question. Yes, all the time. That is what entrepreneurial direction is all about. I think it's going from one failure to the next with an equal amount of enthusiasm for all of them. And really, it's you look at any company, and I don't care. Read about Uber. Wow, imagine what was going on. And we were just getting the very top part of it. And too long. Don't talk about Uber. Talk about my own experience.
No, we're good.
No. Just give me a time update.
It's always difficult. At Rina, there were a few times when I thought we'd never ever get this together. It's just difficult. It's people issues, it's product issues, it's marketing issues. And you look at every startup that I'm involved with. It just takes, I got 101 stories about how many people actually align themselves in the first couple of years and get it together to get 7 years. It takes a long time to just get over those first few years and gel, and there's so many things that have to happen. What I didn't have at the time, there just weren't enough people doing this. So you found a kinsmanship of just a few individuals that were doing it with you. But, you know, the software companies in Toronto at the time that I did it, we still were buddies. And we see each other every time. But there were 6 of us, maybe 10 of us, and we got together. Kevin O'Leary was one. So Kevin and I are still old friends, you know, because he had so-called software company. And so it was just a very few people doing this. It was never without. I think if you take on, and now it's almost forcing you, the way careers are going to be crafted in the future, and the necessity of having a successful and I think satisfying career is going to force you to become more entrepreneurial, to become more comfortable with how you actually have to look after yourself. It's going to be an ongoing learning process, an ongoing process of making yourself that much more desirable to an employer or to how you're going to market yourself. That's going to become a natural thing. But clearly, in all these times, there were, I think fear was a major factor in driving a lot of these things. Just the fear of not being successful drives things. And I don't think there's an entrepreneur out there who doesn't, he doesn't agree to all of this. Is probably just pulling the bull up you guys, because it's tough. It's really difficult.
I can second that. So, we'll talk about actually one of the big transitions that you made after you had a couple of successes in the technology field. You ended up as a director and a lead investor in a beer company that we all know and love today as Mill Street. Can you tell us how you ended up at involved in a beer company after being a technology guy?
So there are many advantages of being a CA. Gives you a lot of advantages. But I was smart enough to know that I wasn't the smartest guy in the class, and I didn't even want to be. I couldn't study hard enough, but I got to know the smartest guy in my class, and this is way back in South Africa. So when we got here, we remained in touch, and I was always his business partner. Why not? He's a smart guy, and that's really the story of Mill Street. We always did deals together. I was his, lead director, investor. He took over the business. And it was wonderful, and I remember I was saying that it was like being in front row seats in a boxing match. And my box is there, and every time he finishes a round, he comes to tell me what's going on. I give him a little advice. We have a chat. Sometimes he takes it, sometimes he doesn't. But I knew he's in the ring, I'm not. And, a lot of this has got to do, I think if you looked at all the various factors for success, most probably, it's people, it's product, it's marketing, it's really time. If you take one thing, it's time. So we got into the market when it was just 6 months, most probably 12 months, 18 months ahead of everyone wanting to become a craft beer producer. And we just had a lot of good forward. And both of us had a few exits before. We had wonderful partners. We had good people help us. And it was just a fantastic ride. Even today, I don't know that much about this industry, but it was very fortunate. And my partner, I give him more credit. He was a CA that became a beer guy because he was really, really astute at a lot of the things he learned in the disciplines of accounting. And I really don't think we would have been anywhere near as successful if we didn't have those qualities. Because financing was easy once we understood it. Forecasting was easy. Financial statements were way for just financial reporting, and being able to fulfill the demand as it got going was the key to success. So you understood how to anticipate demand, how much capital raised, or CapEx you had to spend, where it would go. You understood that a lot easier than most people.
Great. So I'm going to ask kind of an interesting question about you personally, because for years before we actually met, I had heard lots of things about you. And the one piece of your reputation that seemed to always stick out to people was that the softest part of Dennis Bennie is his teeth.
Where's my daughter?
And I have to say, Dennis, now having worked with you for a couple of months, that couldn't be farther from the truth. You're like a super warm person. And so I wonder, why do people think that about you?
I'm tired of these questions. Questions. Usually they say, come, say a few words and decide what you have to say. It's a lot easier. So there's always a little truth, but I don't have it. No, I don't have a temper. I have a very straightforward approach. I'm comfortable being confrontational, and I like to call a spade, and I like to be straightforward about things. It's often not as easy to be, I'd say, direct and honest with people as it should be. But I think that old story about my teeth, I used to say that to make sure people would respect me or not give me a hard time. But I think I brought it upon myself. I should never have told people that story. And I remember saying those things a few times. But I really think that the essence of good management is to be honest. And there are two attributes that I think make you a good person. It's really honesty and most probably kindness. And if you want to be honest, the first person you have to be honest with is yourself. And it took me a long time. And I don't know why I'm even telling you this. This is really quite personal. But it does, you do mature over time and you realize, you know, we're just little specks. We can, I don't know, you go through life and you do this and this. And you're very fortunate to have good people around you. And that's the essence of being a good manager. And good management begins with those forms of honesty. And the kindness factor, I don't know if I really have it, but it's the ability to listen to others so carefully that you can actually get into their world and make their decisions a lot easier. And if I had to drum it down to just a few things that you can take home with you, and if you want to kind of summarize it, well, that's what I aspire to be. And look what I end up with. Anyway.
No, okay, that's great, and I mean, it seems like you would attribute, you know, at least partially your success to that attitude, to that straightforwardness, because it's something that is lacking in a lot of people that I've dealt with.
Look, most smaller companies, it's very difficult to find a style of managing and a way of motivating people and doing things. And almost inevitably, if someone doesn't fit in, by the time they decide that we should tell them how they don't fit in, they should find another job or move along, everyone in the company is wondering why it took you so long. Almost every time. And as you become more confident, or as you become more comfortable with who you are and what you can do and what you can't do, most probably that becomes easier to be honest with everyone around you.
Great. So after you kind of did a whole lot in your career, you decided to become one of the real pushers of the innovation space here in Toronto, and a big part of that was being part of the founding of the Creative Destruction Lab. Can you tell us a little bit about why this means a lot to you, and you know, what the Creative Destruction Lab and its growth means to you personally?
So, a lot of questions. So this is interesting because Creative Destruction Lab is a very unique type of accelerator, and I won't go into it too much, but so the eldest daughter did law, the middle one went to Rotman, the youngest one went to Ivy, so I have a relationship with a whole bunch of people. And the middle one took me back to Rotman and said, they're thinking of doing this lab. It's going to be called Creative Destruction Lab. And this would be one way you want to consider giving back to the city, because the way it works is we get people who have started companies and had an exit to be the mentors for companies coming through the ranks and trying to get to where they'll achieve seed finance. And I love the idea. And once again, you have to take the opportunity, because there was an opportunity to be one of the co-founders of the lab. And the lab, I would encourage you to just see what we've done. It's called Creative Destruction Lab. You can Google it. It's very descriptive in what's happened. And I really have really found it to be so fulfilling, because it's going into its 6th year. And as in the 6th year, there will be a Creative Destruction Lab in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and Halifax. So all these universities are going to have a Creative Destruction Lab. And it is a program that has really achieved wonderful success. And I think more than anything, it's changed some of the attitude towards Toronto. I don't want to go into too much, but artificial intelligence was one of the themes that we had. And this has just taken off and blossomed. And it's actually made it way more cool. Because, and I think it's not the only thing, but one of the things that made it cool to do a startup in Toronto. And this is a global recognition now. We've got people coming from all over the world, and the perspective of Toronto as a great place to do a startup, it has really changed. There are folks from the Valley vying for seats in the lab. And when I find friends of mine from New York that arrive at the lab, and a little embarrassed to see that. I say, I told you so. One day Toronto would be the center of the universe. Paying to be part of this lab. And we've just got such a wonderful community. And I think Trump has given us the boost. People are comfortable coming here. We've got a most probably a multicultural society here that will stretch to all parts of the world and bring great talent here. The artificial intelligence center that we have here, Professor Hinton, is now really at the absolute center ice of this whole revolution, and he's got so many disciples, and it's all here. And yeah, it's been a really exciting time. And the professors that put this together deserve a tremendous amount of credit.
Well, and thank you for your part in helping that take place. I've personally seen the lab grow over the past 3 years, and it's really quite phenomenal.
Yes, and most important, Luminari is going to be in the lab next.
Well, I have two more questions for you. We'll try to wrap it up quickly, but one of the ones that has always gone around in my mind and I've wondered about is when you get up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, do you see Dennis Bennie, the young immigrant, poor, scrappy, entrepreneur, or do you see this successful person who's done all these amazing things in your career?
Before I look in the mirror, I think I'm that young, scrappy guy. I look in the mirror. I told you, you got to be very honest with yourself. But I'm very grateful. I think that if you are, it's always so risky to take these leaps of faith and say, I'm going to trust myself, I'm going to do. Change is hard. And I always try and remind myself how complex that was and how difficult that was. And I guess you got to enjoy every stage of life. I'm no longer that scrappy young guy. I wish I was. In fact, I was just out of sync, If they had all these accelerators and all this stuff to help you right now, I would have loved it. But I still hope to be. And so I try and surround myself with certainly the lab, people like Michael and Adam, Naya and the video, all these things that they let me be part of it. Makes me feel like I'm still young and I can contribute. And for all you guys that listen to me and listen to these stories, I hope there's some take-home value. But for me, it's really, I would pay to do this because to be part of it is just so exciting.
And don't let him fool you. He's definitely still scrappy. So the last question for this evening is one that's obviously pretty close to the heart for us, but why did you choose to invest in us?
Oh, you guys are just so smart. It's not easy to, I don't have a box that I check in, but some of the things that I admire is that scrappiness, and it comes with passion, dedication, and a vision, and an ability to be motivated to disrupt certain industries. And this particular industry, I could envisage myself years ago sitting in this accounting office, trying to figure out how the hell do I get anywhere. And then I went through, has it changed much? Well, I now spend more time at the university than ever, and the CDL's job really is to pair and match the right people. So I see all these MBA students that are coming out of their program, and they're quite lost. They really want to find that perfect thing. And the way we go about doing it, I spoke to a wonderful man here from Espresso, and I said, how do you get this good job? And he said, I just got lucky. And most of this, it is luck, but I think we can enhance that luck. I think we can really take this industry and change it. Firstly, they charge too much. And their work doesn't use the technology that we have right now. And in an information age, we should be way, way more technical in doing what we have right now. And the next generation of work is just a continual learning cycle that you'll have to put yourself through in order to improve your position in the world. And it will all entail what Luminari is doing right now. And I love the fact that you decided to go to CPAs first. Maybe because I can relate to it better. But I think it will take this profession and enhance it a lot by creating a community of CPAs that are much more proud of themselves for the work they do. And a lot of startups I see, if you've got a powerful CFO, it makes a huge difference to how you go about executing all what you have to do, especially if you want to go to the public markets. This is a complex thing, and a lot of people don't realize just how much of a benefit you give to all those others, and now what a perfect complementary fit you would have to some incredible good startups or better companies. And I just love where these guys can go. And I did put the monies down, and I was very happy doing it. And even though he enticed me here under Pulse.
I think he likes you more.
I still like these guys.
Well, we're going to give, I mean, first of all, thank you, Dennis. This has been amazing. I mean, hearing your story is just...